Hey everyone, so what if I told you that the entire foundation of Indian democracy, everything we hold dear, was once saved by a single vote? It sounds crazy, right? But that's exactly what happened. Today, we're diving into one of the most important cases in India's history, the landmark 1973 case of Kesavananda Bharati versus the state of Kerala. And trust me, this was way more than just some dusty court proceeding. This was a full-blown battle for the very soul of the Indian Constitution.
All right, let's get right to the heart of it. The whole thing really came down to one massive question. Can our parliament, the people we elect, just completely change the Constitution? I mean, can they rewrite it, alter it, or even just erase entire parts of it if they want to? The answer to that question, well, it was going to decide the future of the entire country.
So, to really get what was at stake here, you have to picture the scene back then. The general thinking, especially in political circles, was pretty simple. Parliament was supreme. The government basically believed it had unlimited, absolute power to amend the Constitution however and whenever it wanted. No questions asked.
But then, out of nowhere, this totally unexpected challenger steps onto the scene. His name was Kesavananda Bharati. He was the head of a religious monastery, the Ednir Mutt, down in Kerala. And this one man, he was about to become the David in a truly epic David versus Goliath showdown.
And here's the fascinating part, right? This whole thing didn't start as some grand philosophical debate about the Constitution. Not at all. It actually started with something much smaller, much more personal. It was a fight against some land reform laws in Kerala that were directly affecting the property owned by his monastery.
And this right here just lays out the initial conflict perfectly. On one hand, you've got the state government saying, we have the power to take this land. But on the other hand, you have Kesavananda Bharti's fundamental rights, which are literally guaranteed by the Constitution, things like freedom of religion and the right to run his own institution. It was a direct collision course.
So you can see how this one local fight suddenly blew up into this massive, nation-defining question. It was like, wait a minute, if Parliament can make laws that just steamroll over our most basic, fundamental rights, then what's to stop them? Does that mean they have the power to change the very heart and soul of the Constitution itself?
And that's when things moved to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. The stage was set for the ultimate courtroom battle. And believe me, this wasn't just another case on the docket. It was a huge debate about the limits of power, and really, about whether India's democracy was built to last.
And you could tell just how serious this was right from the start. To hear this one case, the Supreme Court put together the largest bench it had ever assembled in its history. A full 13 judges. Think about that. 13 of the country's top legal minds all gathered to decide the future of the Indian Constitution.
So what was the argument? Well, it really broke down into two opposing views. On one side, you had Kesavananda Bharti's lawyer, the legendary Nani Palkhivala. His argument was that the Constitution has a core, a soul, what he called a basic structure, that just can't be changed. But the government's lawyers argued the exact opposite. They said Parliament's power is absolute. If they follow the procedure, they can change anything.
And Palkhivala's argument was so powerful because it was so simple and clear. He basically said, look, the power to amend something doesn't mean you have the power to destroy it. It's like you can renovate your house, you can paint the walls, change the furniture, but you can't just knock down the foundation and still call it the same house. That idea was the absolute core of his entire case. So after months and months of arguments and deliberation, the day finally came in 1973. Judgment Day. The 13 judges were about to deliver a verdict that would, and this is no exaggeration, echo through Indian history forever. And you won't believe how close it was. I mean, it came down to a razor-thin majority. The entire fate of the Constitution was decided by a single vote. The final tally was 7-6. Just think about that for a second. That one single vote was the difference. It just goes to show you how deeply divided even the top legal experts in the country were on this fundamental question of who holds the ultimate power. So, what did that winning side, the majority of 7, actually decide? Well, they came up with something that is now one of the most important ideas in all of Indian law. It's called the Basic Structure Doctrine.
And what it says is pretty straightforward. Yes, Parliament can amend the Constitution, but it cannot touch its most basic, most fundamental features. There are some things that are off-limits.
And what are those features? Well, think of them as that unshakable foundation of the house we talked about. We're talking about things like democracy itself, secularism, the rule of law, having independent courts, and of course, our fundamental rights. The court essentially said, Parliament, you can change the furniture, you can paint the walls, but you absolutely cannot touch the foundation. So here's the bottom line. The verdict drew a clear line in the sand. It said that the power to amend the Constitution, the power given in Article 368, it's a power to make changes, sure, but it is not an unlimited power to completely destroy the Constitution's identity.
Okay, so a huge legal idea was created. That's great for the law books, but why should you care? Why does a case from all the way back in 1973 still have such a massive impact on your life today? What is its real legacy for all of us?
Well, it's because this doctrine acts like a constitutional shield, a permanent shield that protects our democracy. It means that no single government, it doesn't matter how big their majority is in parliament, can wake up one day and decide to change the fundamental democratic or secular nature of India. In short, it puts the constitution above parliament. Let's make this super personal. What does this case guarantee for you? Well, it's the reason your fundamental rights can't just be voted away by a government. It's what makes sure our courts stay independent to protect your freedoms. It stops governments from passing random, unfair laws that go against our country's core values. This case, quite literally, is the guardian of your rights. And that brings us to a final question, something for you to think about. We know this case protected the entire basic structure, but if you had to choose just one feature of our Constitution to protect above all others, say democracy or your fundamental rights or secularism, which one would you pick? Which one do you think is the most essential part of that foundation? Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining this explainer.